Hello, this is Aaron from Lo-Fi and DIY, and as a way of introducing my AXO series, that's EXO, a series of Packfilm camera backs, in other words, adaptable backs to all of these cameras, I'm going to go ahead and try to do an overview of the cameras that are available for this conversion. There was, I believe, 34. I have out of that, I think 31 here. I have a pretty exhaustive collection, but not comprehensive by any means. It's still missing a few. Basically, what I want to talk to you about is what the functions of these cameras are and how they will help you to convert this from Packfilm. For those who are the uninitiated, uninitiated, I should say, into the world of Packfilm. Okay, they are medium format cameras that were designed to shoot on a pack of film like this. It used to be made by Polaroid, but then Polaroid closed down their factories, and then Fuji kept producing it until 2016. Then they discontinued. This particular little box can fetch about $125 to $150 right now. Originally, it was more like $8 or $10. So you can see how scarcity is driving up the price, thus making these cameras borderline obsolete. There are still people who shoot with them, but they would probably choose the best of the batch. Right here, I've got my professional cameras, these three here. Okay. This was my first professional camera, the 195. I swapped out the viewfinder, so that's the only change I made. But I'm thinking about swapping it back because I really do like the central viewfinder, whereas the Zeiss is an offset. Okay, let's talk about what makes these better or worse for conversion. First off, all of the options on these three manual cameras I have here, I believe there was 4 originally. I don't have the 4th one. It's extremely hard to get a hold of and expensive. But basically, the professional cameras do not run on batteries, and they have nice big glass, and that nice big glass is fully manual. So you have that, and they'll have a hot shoe, you can see, it is a cold shoe, and a Zeiss viewfinder. A Zeiss Icon viewfinders are kind of like the cherry on top of these professional and higher level automatic cameras. Now we get over here, these are the automatic cameras. You'll see that the ones up front here are metal. By the way, all of these are metal as well, all the professional cameras. They're metal, and their front standard is metal as well. Okay, and they have the Zeiss Icon viewfinder, the Zeiss Icon being, like I said, the cherry on top. This right here is an exception, and actually so is the 195, but this is a 355. The 195 I do not have, or I have the other viewfinder in a box somewhere. But basically the 195 is supposed to have that particular viewfinder. Basically, when I'm talking about the viewfinders, that's the first feature that you're going to see change in stages from the front to the back of this amount of cameras I have here. I'll just quickly go over that. The Zeiss Icon, you're looking through one window, okay, in the back of it, and that is actually both the rangefinder and the viewfinder. This middle stage stuff right here, you can see these guys have a slightly different looking aesthetic, so I'll use this 355 as an example. It has 2 windows. This is actually the rangefinder. This is the viewfinder. One of the reasons I think that this appeared on some of the cameras and not others, even on the higher end, is because you are sitting directly over the lens here. There is no need for parallax correction, which these are all parallax corrected, which means you're looking off to the side, and it has to make it look like you're kind of looking from the center. So it does corrections. Now, when you have a centralized one like this with an offset rangefinder, there is none of that. So your viewfinder is a tiny bit more accurate, even though this appears, like I said, on the next stage back, the less desirable ones. And I don't think there's anything wrong with those viewfinders at all. It takes a little getting used to. But by now, I've gotten quite used to it, and I think it's actually kind of fun to toggle back and forth between that rangefinder window and then go through the view. Now, the next step back from here, so you'll notice these actually, they fold down as well magnetically. The second level viewfinder. Third level viewfinder you'll find here is the same as a second and pretty much same function as a high-end first, but it doesn't fold down. That's the only difference, really. It works just fine. It just doesn't happen to fold down. And of course, then we get to the cheapest, but still pretty fun. They're really fun camera, but the very back one, what you will see is this is the front, okay? And then if you go to the back side of it, let's see here, we'll go around. You will see it only has one window, which would make you think, oh, well, that's rangefinder and viewfinder in one. Yes and no. What the big difference is for the ones in the back is the ones in the back actually have a different type of range finding. Okay, so in their case, the way you find distance it's kind of clever, but it's also kind of silly, is you put a line at the top and bottom of a person's head. So you're adjusting the focus, and you'll have this little line at the top and then the line at the bottom, and they come together to where they're touching the top and bottom of the head as you're looking through the viewfinder. And based on how tightly that's pinched, like pinch the head thing, for people who know that reference, how tightly you're pinching down to that head means it's further and further away. Small means really far away. Wide means close up. So you're pinching it down to the distance, and meanwhile, it's calculating based on an average. Very funny viewfinder system, but again, it's certainly not as accurate, but it is, and this is something to point out, it is a variable range finder. It actually is a workable range finder, so it is actually a big step above a lot of marketed cameras that were based on zone systems, including cameras today. If you look at even a lot of Instax cameras, they have zone systems. They don't really have a viewfinder rangefinder situation. So anyway, so that is it for the rangefinders. Now let's go into detail on one other thing here. Okay, these are fully manual, as I said, so you will just be using your light meter and walking it through based on the ISO of the film back, of the XO. It could be Instax, so it could be 800, or it could be I-type. Eventually I want to make an I-type back. Then that would be 650 about, and but then it could also be on the 2x3 back that I have, and the 2x3 back that I have for it is a 2x3 Graflex. Then you could put any film on it, so you could actually have potentially a 100. So each one of these would require different adjustments. This camera obviously wouldn't, if you've worked with manual cameras, there's really nothing to it. It's very easy to adjust for that, okay, because you adjust for it in the light meter. Now these automatic cameras, it's a little more tricky, but the ones that have all the writing on top like this, instead of, let me see, that has the writing on top, okay. The ones that have all the writings on top like this, instead of having something like this, where it says color, black and white, okay. These, with all the writing on top, and they will have a little toggle here at the base. Actually, I'll just flip it back. They'll have a toggle here at the base with a film type. Then they have this toggle here. Basically, they have, I believe, at least 6 apertures. Maybe it's 6 apertures. They have the 6 apertures, plus you would add in this lighten darken dial, which goes 2 stops in one direction lighten and 1 stop in the other direction darken. That actually gives this camera incredible versatility to take on different films. Okay, so it is not limited to the 300. I'm sorry, the 3000 or the 75 film. It could have a whole variety. And when I set this up with my EXO Instax wide back, it was very easy for me to dial in to get to use the automatic features on this. I just had to be a little creative, and then I came up with it. And once it was locked in, it took pictures like crazy. All of them looked really good. So you can get good results using this automatic feature. You'll note that basically all of the metal, full body metal cameras that I show in the front with the Zeiss icon, and some without the Zeiss icon that are full body metal. This one here, I believe that's a 240. Let's see. Yes, 240. Even without the Zeiss icon, the ones that actually have that on the front and they're metal, they'll have all the features. They're pretty great that way. Okay, now let's go back to what I was just talking about, this 2 sliders. The limitation here is you're going to have 2 apertures. Okay, the limitation here, you're going to have 2 apertures, and you're going to have that 2 stops in one direction, 1 stop in the other direction variability. So you're not going to have the option of like 6 apertures. Okay, but you can still work within that range. It's just not as versatile. Okay, so this has that exposure setup. Now, one thing you will find though is some of these, you can go back to this type that's the inexpensive viewfinder type, the one that's hard mounted up and that can't be folded down. And you will see they have all of the apertures in there. So you can get one of the cheaper models with all the apertures. So in other words, cheap, but all the features. And if you look at this also, this right here is a, let's see, Polaroid 220. These can be had for nothing. I mean, pretty much nothing online, and it's fully functional. Another aspect that would be kind of nice about a camera like this, other than a really great price that you're obviously going to get it for, is if you're switching over to my EXO system, you would be actually removing the door and setting it aside for posterity, whatever you want later on. It can be popped back on, but you're removing the door, and that's the only metal on the camera for the most part. Okay, it's almost all the weight. So you take that off of there, you got it. A medium format, very, very light camera. Okay, so that's some versatility there. Medium formats are usually not all that light, especially when you move in the direction of something like the Mamiyas and the Graflexes. They just get downright heavy. And if you're used to lugging those around like I am, my gosh, it can get strenuous sometimes. So, okay, so there it is. Those are the plastic ones. Now let's really quickly jump into another thing that you're going to deal with here. If you're switching over to EXO, basically you bring the camera that you bring. If the battery enclosure or the battery is all rotted out, then obviously that's something that you're going to have to solve. Okay, and it is not a big deal to solve it. As a matter of fact, I'll show you a very primitive version. One of my early versions solving this problem is just in here I have a cheap little carrier I got out of a flashlight, and it holds 3 AAA batteries, which is 4.5. And if you have any question about how much battery you need for this, all you got to do is look on the inside of the door. It always tells you on the inside of the door what the battery is. Now, another thing you need to do though is you need to bypass this switch, which is often corroded and messed up anyway. There's a switch right down there when you're actually soldering it in or taping it in or whatever. Bypass that switch. If you don't bypass the switch, that means every time these bellows are not fully extended, the battery's off. Okay, and obviously with my kit, you need to have that variability. So, and if you can't be bothered to bypass this switch, then all you really need to use my EXO kit is just put something in there that will permanently hold, or not permanently hold, that will wedge when you close the door that holds that switch in place. So you could put anything in there, like pieces of foam, you could put pieces of plastic, whatever it is that you want to wedge that little switch. And then that will make it so that it doesn't shut off every time you fold the bellows in. Okay, so the batteries are important. There are new versions of the old batteries. It used to be really hard to find them, but now with something like Amazon, it is not hard to find them. And you'll see some cameras like this one here, the contacts are in pretty good shape. So I could get away with ordering some of those on Amazon and just use it as it was originally intended. The only thing is, if I do that, I still have to put something in there to wedge that switch. So the bypass switch is closed. Okay, so now let's talk about, since we've got the batteries, we've got the exposure, we've got the viewfinders. Let's talk about the flash, okay? These cameras did come with flashes. The very first version is a good old M3 bulb set up here, and it's not terrible. It's all right. First off, it's blue cast because that helps with the color film. But second, you can rotate this. So you do a flood flash. I'll do it here. And when you, okay, this is the forward rotation, right? Or actually, I'm sorry. This is, I'm trying to put it on mentally here. Okay, yeah, this is a forward rotation. I'll put it on one of the cameras. It'll be easier for me to think. So when you're putting it on the camera, this is easy. All you got to do is clip it on the front like this with this little lever. Let's see. Again, hard to do when you're holding a phone, but it will work, I swear. Okay. There we go. Okay, so it clipped on, and then you attach this to the side here. Okay, and you'll notice it's aimed at the other side. This is where with it aimed forward, but you can also aim it straight up as a flood. So it's a really versatile flash as a bounce flash and as a direct flash. It uses MP3 bulbs, and this right here is to eject the bulb. You just hit that once it's been popped. And the point of that is it gets quite hot, so you want to just eject it, not grab it with your fingers right away. The one thing that's really good to know about these flash bulbs is they don't expire. In other words, yes, it's true you can find ones, and once you blow it, once you've used the flash, it's done. But meanwhile, if you get new old stock, which is everywhere, just go ahead and buy it with no worries, because it's going to work every time. It can be, in this case, 50 years old, and it'll work just fine because it's blown glass. It's not going to be a problem. So this works with all these cameras that you don't see this type of thing on, okay? Or in this case, this type of thing, or this type of thing. In other words, you're looking for ones that have a blank space that uses that flash. Okay, now the other ones, as you can imagine, the typical hot shoe camera here will use this type of flash. Let me see if I can slide it in. Okay. Okay, I'll just set it there for now. Anyway, this type of flash, you plug it in on the side, you're good to go. Okay, so that type. My favorite, other than, of course, the electric flash, I do like that electric flash, is this one. And it's an odd duck, but this is my favorite. And I get to use these high intensity, high energy, high power flash cubes with it. And like I say, new old stock, I keep finding things like this. It's no problem at all. What's really nice about this is you see these louvers on the front. Okay, it's 4 flashes per cube. Okay, the louvers are adjusted by the focus bar. So when you're really close, it tightens down the louvers and makes it so very little light gets through. And when the scene is farther away, it actually opens these louvers up. So I think it's just really clever. Along those lines, a very early attempt at an electric flash has those louvers built in as well. And that's the 360. The 360 right here would have this type of flash on it. Now, the one thing I can tell you about, there's two things I could tell you about the 360 that make it less desirable than any other camera here for converting. One is it's really hard to get the wiring in and out of that space because there's so much electronics in the back. The battery conversion would go right here, and I think you could use a CR123, but I'm not sure. It's very tight fit. Okay, it's been a while since I've done that conversion. Second thing is the capacitor in here is giant and is old. It probably doesn't work anymore. Third is this thing here, this beast, comes with a charger, okay, which charges the battery in this thing, okay? And that battery has to be converted. So you'd have to swap out the capacitor, you'd have to swap out the battery, and then when you're done with all that, you would have to hope that the charger even works, and then basically you would have to change the electronic there. So that one's a tricky one to deal with. Okay, I hope that that was a helpful introduction. I've run this video a little long, and then we'll get into the Instax wide a little later. Thank you, and hopefully if you could just like and subscribe, things like that, that would be great. Thanks.